to understand it. The original question came up in 2012 as a consequence of citizens either attending the steering committee or sending in questions and concerns through me or others about how do we know that our family member didn't succumb to something that was caused by the tailings pile. So that was the first time that we had UDOH do the study, and they came back and gave us essentially the information I've told you today, and they advised that we get an update from them 5 years later because they do 5-year periods. So what I'm reporting today is that the update in fact was done again and did not find differences from the 2012 findings. So bottom line, there are increased incidences of 2 types of cancer in the Moab area compared to Utah, but they are not related well to exposure to the tailings risks. So they're small risk factor, but by far it's lifestyle choices that lead to these things. So, okay, want to show you the same chart for up around Crescent Junction because our citizens in Thompson Springs and the nearest residents up there, that would be Rod and Lanny's place. You know those 2 folks. And again, you can see the same pattern. That is the levels monitored over the last year were pretty low off-site, higher on-site, but still quite a bit away from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission's guidelines for maximum allowable. Okay, I'm going to hammer you with a whole bunch more data here, but I just show these because the radon data in Moab on the left top and in Crescent Junction on the right top shows pretty much what you expect. These are quarterly measurements since they started measuring clear back in 2007. 2009 was when they started shipping tailings. And what I see in the data is that as you put more tailings in the disposal cell, you get gradually higher radon up there. But fortunately, even the peaks in the winter still don't exceed about half of the allowable impact. Moab, we have a similar situation. I believe what's happening there is that in 2014 they started going right through the heart of the pile. And also keep in mind that due to the configuration of that pile, it gets deeper and wider as it approaches the river, which means that this increase the last 3 years is almost certainly related to a larger excavation face at the pile where they're moving the tailings. The bottom lines are Moab and Crescent Junction gamma radiation. It's a little hard to see in this light, but there's a gray zone at the bottom of all 4 of these charts. That's the background for the 2 areas.
What's the yellow line?
The yellow line is NRC guideline for maximum allowable impact.
So we're below.
Okay. Okay, and then this is the data for the radioparticulates. That's, believe it or not, that's distilled down out of about 200 data points per quarter. So I'm not going to bore you with the intimate details of that. One thing I do want to point out is you'll see an apparent increase in the radioparticulates in the last year. That's actually an artifact of the fact that the project team started measuring 6 radionuclides instead of 4. In other words, basically giving us more protection because they're measuring more things that could risk our community. I just heard today that they are actually going to add a couple more to that with their next report. All right, and again, good question, Councilman Holliday. The yellow line there is the maximum allowable impact based on NRC standards for public exposure. Okay, last slide. This is about the groundwater remediation, and I just couldn't resist the urge, and yes, I changed that picture since I gave you the office.
I was going to say, this doesn't look the same.
I got a guy.
I figured you didn't want to look at a guy, you wanted to look at something worthwhile here. That is the service road for the defensive wells. And if you look closely, you can see that on the other side of that nice split rail fence are some concrete vaults, which are the protective vaults for the defensive wells, some of them. But that was going to be a part of the recreation trail open to the public back in 2012. They got the split rail fence in, and that was about all they were allowed to spend because the project got stopped. So anyhow, bottom line, 900,000 pounds of ammonia and 4,800 pounds of uranium have been kept out of the river by that defensive well system since they started it up in 2003. They're currently continuing to operate it. This time of year with the river level low, they actually inject fresh water in wells next to the river to create what they call a curtain, freshwater curtain, that defends against groundwater from migrating into the river. When the river's high, they don't have to do that. The river does its own thing. There's so much water in the channel that pushes out into the surrounding ground. So, and don't forget, another 1 to 2 years at least after the pile is removed. Okay, that's all I had for today. Happy to answer any other questions you might have.
Any further questions?
I appreciate the presentation, Lee.
All right.
Very well
You're
done.
welcome. My
Thank you.
pleasure.
Thank you.
Okay. Where'd you go?
We will move to the Housing Authority of Southeastern Utah Semi-Annual Report. Ben Riley.
Good afternoon. I apologize for not having a snazzy PowerPoint presentation. You can follow along in I did bring some pictures this time, so we'll go over those towards the end. Follow along on my report, and feel free to stop me as you like. Under financials in our budget, I don't really have a whole lot to report on that currently. Our fiscal year 2017 audit is almost completed, should be done by mid-month February, so just about finishing that up. I'm also working on our 6-month budget to actual. Our fiscal year runs from July 1st to June 30th, so right after the January 1st, I start working on the 6-month budget to actual. So once we get some indirect costs allocated here and there for December and the accounts are figured out with December's financials, I can do that. And so the board will go over that in February. We're working on our 9th mutual self-help grant. That was awarded in August. I think I reported on that last time I was here. That runs from August 2017 to August 2019. I point that out mostly because that continues to be our largest ongoing funding source. Though fortunately with some of the tax credit projects that I'll talk about here in a little bit, that's becoming not so much the case, which is good news in my opinion. Moving on to some of our programs, Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher, where a family can go and move into a place so we can subsidize a portion of the rent. We pretty much stay steady with around helping about 45 families with that. We have the money to, they give us 73 vouchers because of the high housing costs in Moab. We're only able to fund about 45 to 48 of those sometimes, depending on where people are leased up. Our waiting list is usually about a year long. That's staying pretty constant. Our rent-to-own homes, we have 4 projects in Blanding, Monticello, and then 13 homes in Moab. 8 of those homes in Moab will come to the end of their 15-year compliance period at the end of 2018, so families are able to rent these homes with deed-restricted affordability for 15 years. Their rent is paying down the mortgage payment. At the end of the 15 years, they can buy the home. So that end of the 15 years for our Rim Hill subdivision, which is off of Boulder Avenue, will come up at the end of this year. So those are 8 homes that we'll lose as far as affordable rentals, and they'll go to the families that are occupying those. There are some deed restrictions that continue on, but the families can turn around and sell those after the 15 years, but if they aren't in the home for the entire 15 years, there's a payback to HASU, and it's kind of a complicated, it's not that complicated, but a formula that goes into it that if they haven't been in the house 15 years, they pay HASU back a portion of the equity that they didn't earn. So the point is they want to see families being in these homes for the entire 15 years, and then once they have been in that home for 15 years, then they can sell it, or if they choose to realize the equity that their rent-to-own home has produced. So we'll lose a couple of those in 8 of those at the end of 2018. The bright side of that is we usually are able to get a pretty good sized pot of money that we're actually applying for. When I talk about Wingate Village, I'll mention the community funds. We've used community funds from the sale of Crown Homes to finance a couple of projects, and we'll hopefully do that with Wingate Village. And so even though we lose some homes, HASU usually gets a pretty good pot of money to use for other affordable housing projects. So hopefully that, those community funds will turn around and use those in Wingate Village, which I'll talk about in a minute, and we can build 22 new deed restricted rentals. So hopefully it continues. Cinema Court, 60 unit deed restricted affordable rentals for 99 years, 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms, serving various AMIs between 25 and 50%. That project continues to do really well. I often talk to people up in Salt Lake, partners that look over that project that help us with these larger projects, and they say it's one of the best cash flowing projects that they've seen in affordable housing, so that's always good to hear. Sellers Management manages that, and they do a great job of keeping it full. You can see the waiting list numbers are really good.
What was the name of that management company, Ben?
Sellers Management. And we're talking about, we've been working with them as far as our consulting for the senior MAPS project too. So
They're out of Salt Lake City, or?
yeah, or somewhere in that surrounding area.
Okay.
Yeah, somewhere up there. I'm trying to think of the other one. There's like 2 major affordable housing project or management companies that everybody's using these days.
They're just like a manager. They're not a development company.
No, they just do management. We had talked about potentially HASU managing those properties, and I talked to a bunch of people up in Salt Lake who have been doing this for a long time, and what I've gleaned is that it really doesn't make sense until you own at least like 500 units to actually, to do with the insurance and the liability and all these things to do that. So it's better to find an outside management company that does this professionally.
How many employees do they employ here locally, Sellers?
So there's one project manager, I would call him, and I think he's in Price, and then there's 2 or 3. There's the on-site manager that she does, Jasmine. She does both taking applications, but she also does some of the groundwork there. And I think they have either 1 or 2 other maintenance people there. But yeah, Jasmine Duncan, I have to give her props because she does a lot over there for just kind of like a one-man crew. For 60 units is commendable. So. They're also undergoing their audit. They run on a calendar year, so we're also working with their auditors. But yeah, it's always been a very successful project. I always give it, obviously Moab has an affordable housing need, so I think that be able to keep the waiting list, people on the waiting list. But I also think that Sellers is just doing a really good job with, and Jasmine especially. So. Our Virginia apartments, we manage those. There are 28 units behind the 7-Eleven gas station on 300 South, 1 and 2 bedrooms. We have actually had some problems with turnover there. So we've been going through our waiting list is actually historically low right now. I think I don't know if I didn't put specific numbers on here, but usually if we're not on a 1-year waiting list, that's considered, pretty short. So I think a lot of it's just because we've had a lot of recent turnover there. So. Under our self-help program, we're still building in Valley View, which is Tim Keogh and Bill Winfield's subdivision off Bonita off of Mill Creek Drive. We have finished 10 homes there. We're just about to finish 5 in February. We're started on 5 in the fall, so we'll finish another 5 in the summer, and then we're about to start construction another 8 there. So when it's all said and done, we'll have done 28 in that subdivision of the 32 lots. So I really want to also give a shout out to Tim and Bill because it's given me a lot of time off to do things like what I'll talk about next in the senior living project and the Wingate Village project. When I don't have to spend as much of my time developing self-help lots, I can do other things like tax credit projects. So it's really great to 28 homes represents roughly about 3 years of self-help building, and we do about 10 a year. So it's been nice to take some time off from me from doing. Well, I'm doing some development. It's giving me time to do that while we do, while Tim and Bill develop the subdivision. So we typically kind of go back and forth between buying lots from developers and then while we're developing our own and at any given time. So Let's see what else I got in here. So yeah, 28 homes when it's all said and done. That'll represent all of our grant date, which was 20 homes. We have our contract for grant 9, which I spoke about before, was for 19 homes. So we'll have 13 done in Valley View when we're all said and done there, with the 8 and the 5 that are continuing are all under grant 9. We are looking at San Juan County. We haven't done a build in San Juan County since a long time ago, 6 or 7 years. So we're looking to try to do a group in Blanding. Really easy to find land, affordable land to build on there, but it's a little bit harder to find the applicant pool to do that. So we plan on like a 6-month outreach to try to find some people who want to build some houses in San Juan County, but it's a little bit tougher down there. The market in Moab is easy. We have a huge waiting list for self-help, but in Blanding it's not so much. So the most exciting news, I would say, is we got financing for the tax credits for the senior living project. We're going to do 36 units of affordable senior rentals behind the hospital. I brought a little map in case, so you guys can see where it is exactly. It's right behind the LDS church. Park Avenue kind of is stubbed on either side. So we were granted by the healthcare district this land, which was really great to help the project. It's about 2 acres north of the hospital. It's 36 units, mostly 1 and 2 bedrooms, all 1 and 2 bedrooms, 31 bedrooms to 6 2-bedrooms. Same as Cinema Court, AMI is 25% to 50%, which in layman's terms is essentially rent from $250 a month to $850 a month at the highest tier. So I put in some kind of hard numbers to kind of help people understand how important this tax credit finds and why it is so competitive. We're estimating that the bill is going to be around $7 million. We're still finalizing that, but from that, the payments for most of the building will come from tax credit. 5.5 million essentially will be granted to the project by some investor that we're now actively looking for. So that's essentially a grant. So we won't have to pay a mortgage payment on those, which is how we're able to keep the rents low. So we'll have 1 million roughly of permanent debt, and then I want to thank the city of Moab who gave us a grant. HASU is using a CDBG grant that we received in 2016 of roughly almost $300,000 for that as well. So kind of rounding out that. So I also brought in a very preliminary, I don't know if you guys have it or not, but a very preliminary site plan, just to give you an idea. Again, this is so preliminary, it's not even funny, but it gives a rough estimation of, since we have a 2-acre parcel, and we do plan on trying to go 3 stories. That's we're hoping to not connect Park Drive, but we're going to continue to fight the city on that. We have the neighbor support on that. L-shaped building. All the 2 bedrooms will be on the north side. The 1 bedrooms on that strip, that north and south strip. Then hopefully creating a courtyard with some balconies that overlook the courtyard. So that's kind of the preliminary drawing right now. Some covered parking, same as over at Cinema Court. There's certain things that we get more points on, like covered parking and other amenities that help us score on that tax credit application. So we have those in there. So any questions on that before I move on?
On the rents that you detailed in here, the upper ends of those rents, are they representative of market rate?
So they are. So in order to be competitive also with the application, Utah Housing is encouraging mixed income development. So we do have some market rate units. I put market rate in air quotes because I still feel, as somebody that looks at rents all the time, they're still well under the market rate, but we consider the market rate because they're around 80% AMI. So yes, there are 5 market rate units, which will be probably $650 for a 1-bedroom, $850 for a 2-bedroom, or somewhere around there. I'm not like totally figured out yet, but somewhere in there.
Thank you. That was a good question.
nothing else, I'll move on. I also brought a map of Wingate Village. It's another project we're working on. This is a 33-unit subdivision that I'm hoping to start the plating process and be bringing some things to you guys here in the next few months. We were also considering coming in for a tax credit application for this project, but ultimately decided against it because we didn't think it scored very well. The problem with projects like this is that when you get to these smaller unit counts, so we were trying to do a 22-unit project, so it's 33 units in total. We were looking at doing mutual self-help around this perimeter, these single-family detached, and then doing townhome rentals, so 22 affordable townhome rentals down in this block, and then this duplex down here would be an ADA unit. We decided not to apply for tax credits for that project because we didn't think it would score. When you get to these smaller size projects, which even 36 units, the senior project is considered a small project in the scheme of things, this is being even smaller. You still have a lot of the same costs that you have with larger projects, a lot of the soft costs with financing and fees and all of those things that are basically fixed no matter whether you're doing an 80-unit project or a 22-unit project. The difference is the 22-unit project doesn't bring in as much revenue, so it's harder to make these things pencil out than some of the larger projects. So what we're doing in the next year before tax credit season, tax credit application starts in October, or that's when the application's due, so we're working till then. We're trying to bolster that application by bringing in some other financing sources. One thing, I'm working with Zachariah and some of the county staff on a CDBG application this spring to do some water and sewer upgrades on this property, which will be a huge help. So we're working on that to submit that this spring. And I'm also working on those community funds from past Crown projects, going in, just trying to find leverage so we don't have to rely as much on the tax credits. If we can bring in other monies like CDBG and these community funds and other things like that, we score a lot better. I mean, everything is just scoring to the application. It's such a competitive thing. It's a very objective application process. So, you know, if we can bring in more money, that means less reliance on tax credits. That means they'll give you, if you can do it for less tax credits, they're much more happy to give you the tax credits that you need for it. So, over the next 6 to 8 months, that's what we'll be looking at, trying to leverage some more funding sources to try to make this work and make it more competitive this go around. And if we can't get tax credits, then we'll kind of have to go back to the drawing board and find out. We could always do a Crown project with some of these homes, like what I was explaining before. Problem with Crown is that you can only do 10 homes at a time, and it tends to be not worth it financially for HASU. It's a lot of compliance and a lot of work for not a lot of money, to manage those. Whereas a normal tax credit project, we get a nice developer's fee, we get an ongoing administrative fee. They're not 15 years, they're for 99 years, deeded, restricted, affordable. So it's a lot of benefits to doing a regular tax credit deal as opposed to a Crown project. The nice thing about Crown is that they're probably going to score because it's in a separate pool, so it's like almost guaranteed to get the credits. So we're going to see how it goes and see if we can leverage some money first, and then move on from there.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ben.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Where was this Wingate Village?
So this is behind the KOA. So if you turn in like you're going to Tierra del Sol before the horse trail arena, you keep going straight instead of going into Tierra del Sol. You'll see there's a big school district property. You keep going around. It dead ends right there. You can kind of see our piece. It's like a triangular piece.
Did you come up with that name?
I did. You like that, don't you?
Easy, gentlemen.
The only other thing I have to report is that we are still working on deed restricted administration. We still have a plan to bring forth a policy if you guys in the city ever do some sort of inclusionary zoning, or if a developer ever comes in and wants to voluntarily donate some affordable units as part of their project. You guys have a way to say, all right, HASU, now, they said they're going to build 10 houses. How do we make them do that? So we're looking into places like Park City, Aspen, Telluride, places that have been doing this and trying to mold those, and working with the county, some county staff, the Vistas over at the county, as well as the Housing Task Force to try to come up with a good proposal that would, make it cheap and easy to, if somebody says, I want to build affordable housing along with this development, so you guys have a mechanism to do that. So,
What's the, when you say working on that policy, what does that entail? Are you talking
Yeah, I mean, essentially like a policies and procedures type of thing, how we would go about doing this, and really how.
Well, I guess let me clarify my question.
Sure.
Is that you're just going to create a policy through the housing authority, or are we talking the state legislature? Or
No, it's something for the housing authority to come to the council that said, okay, if a developer comes to you and says they will build affordable housing, whether with the inclusionary zoning or not, that you have a mechanism that says, okay, he says he's going to do.
I see.
He set aside these 10 units. Who's going to make sure that the people are moved in are the people that you want, like the correct AMI, or if they resell, is somebody monitoring the deed restriction to say it can only increase 3% a year or something like that.
And we need a template,
Yeah.
When something like that comes down the pipeline. I mean, obviously, there's probably some different options, but
Right.
that's great.
Yeah. And fortunately, at first, the idea, and I don't want to, maybe I shouldn't say this, but the idea is that we were going to ask for like somebody to monitor like a funded position that was paid through the city and the county, maybe jointly, that, if you did the inclusionary zoning policy. But the more and more we look into it, it seems like it's easier the way the Park City does it. They do not necessarily have a funded position, or at least initially to not have it be this position that's like, all right, we need $15,000, $20,000, $30,000 a year for some person to do this.
Yeah.
It's a little bit easier than we initially thought. So.
I was getting this confused with what was the issue with deed restrictions. We talked at some point like we needed someone like a federal agency to bend a little bit.
Right. Well, yeah.
Oh, it's
Still not
state.
much bending going on with USDA with self-help. So that's still,
And that was it a state office that we needed to deal with?
Right. Yeah.
So let's talk about that sometime
Sure.
soon.
Okay.
We talked about that for the meeting with the governor.
And we've made a little bit of progress. Emily Niehaus with Community Rebuilds has been able to pound through some deed restrictions. They're not, again, kind of like the ones that we have at Hasu. We have some deed restrictions on those houses, but they don't really have the teeth. I mean, the families can still turn around and sell those houses pretty much on day one, even though they don't, historically speaking, most of the time, like 99% of the time. Emphasize that.
Yeah.
But they can, and that's part of the USDA's plan for this program. They mean it to be an equity building program,
Yeah.
But there are places like in California and more progressive states, I want to say, that are building these, are realizing that we want this to be an actual part of the affordable housing market and not just this equity building program.
When it comes to like these scenarios where it's an upzone, like someone comes to either the city or the county and say, I want to do an affordable housing development and increase density, we have to be able to have, in my opinion, something like that in place with some teeth, because
Right.
we just do, and
Right.
so.
Yeah, and this is separate. The mutual self-help situation is kind of separate than what we're talking. I think Zachariah would still probably work with the developer and come up with, the deed restriction outline like he did with Arroyo Crossing. He did a great job of putting that together.
Yeah.
And then having somebody to actually enforce it, and that's what we're discussing. Or maybe not enforce is the right word, but I don't know, make sure it's running smoothly.
Administer.
Administer.
I know
Well,
that
the
word.
Thank
like
you.
some of the developments with the self-help, more than 90% of them in certain developments are all being converted into manly rentals from self-help.
So and a misnomer is that that's happening, which is not true. Fortunately,
it is.
Well, so we had the one project in Tierra del Sol, and I think that's a very important one. To that project in particular was during the crash, during 2008, 2009,
Right.
2010, when nobody was developing subdivisions, and it was the time when we didn't have any lots. There was
Yeah.
nowhere to build besides the only people that had built lots were people that built them in overnight.
It's circumstantial.
It was very circumstantial.
Yes.
That
I get that.
right.
But how many units in that particular development?
20.
Yeah, it's
Which is we built about 150, so
yeah.
it's a percentage for sure, but
likely
yeah.
to increase, I'm sure.
I hear this a lot, because somebody was just a house just came up for sale in Tierra del Sol like a week ago, and I heard about it. And every time a house comes up for sale,
I raise it just for a point, for the deed restriction.
right?
An example of why those things make sense.
Why we need a deed restriction.
Right.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
Any other questions?
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
We are now to the portion of our meeting where it is citizens to be heard. These are citizens who would like to be heard on an item that is not on the agenda. Do we have any citizens to be heard? Thank you. Would you time? We give citizens around 3 minutes to give what they want to say, and we need you to state your name. You can sit there or at the podium, whichever you prefer.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is August Rossi. I've recently relocated my family here about a year ago because of great opportunities Moab had for my family. My girlfriend landed a job with the school district working with kids with special needs, and I do construction, so Moab was a great place for that with a lot of work going on right now. I've been riding dirt bikes for 24 years. It's not only something that I do, but it's a family thing. The whole family gets into it. My son, he's been doing it for 9 years now as well, so it's nice to be able to pass the tradition down. And motocross is a very well family sport, so that's kind of why I'm here today, to talk to you about the land that you guys have on the outside of town, which used to be Red Rocks motocross track. Not only is Moab fortunate enough to have a track, a location for a track, but there's already a track that's built. And it was built by Dirtworks, which is a reputable motocross builder. That's all they do is build tracks. So they built some very nice, safe property there, nice, safe track there for kids of all ages to enjoy. There's a pee-wee track on the property as well to accommodate kids all the way down to 3 years old, which is really, really nice. Yeah, it has a full gate. Announcers towers, bathrooms. I mean, the place is really definitely set up. I've traveled, raced motocross nationally, and traveled the country racing motocross races from Maryland to California, went to Tennessee to Loretta Lynn's Ranch to the Amateur National this last year. And so I know a good track when I see one, and I seen that property and was really anxious to know what was going on with it and see maybe hopefully be a possibility to help maintain the property. It's so closely located to town. Not only does it make it easier for the racers and the riders to go get something to eat or go to the car wash or to the parts store, but I think that would also help the economy and give also some people another reason to visit Moab, which the list goes on. So, I mean, we all love coming here. This just gives it another reason for other people to come here as well. I promised to put a sign up on the property stating all the rules and regulations. Wear your helmet and all the, which way the track goes and all that. And I live close to the property and would be willing to donate my time to stopping by there and checking on it numerous times a day to make sure everybody's abiding by the rules and regulations. The closest track is over 100 miles away, so it does make motocross very, very tough, and actually a very big need for it here in this town. I have a petition here that shows there was a lot of people in Moab that were interested in using this track, as well as the Western Slope. There was numerous people all over the Western Slope that come out here to ride and would come out to Red Rocks MX because that is the closest track for everyone that lives in. There is not a track in Grand Junction, so if you live Montrose, Delta, I lived in Carbondale for a while and had to take my son to Denver to ride a track. And so I think it would do very good here, and as well as I know I've talked to people that have rode this track in the past through the RMX series that I participate in, and I've heard nothing but good things, and still ask me, hey, where's the track? Is it still there? When can we come back? So I know track promoters and other tracks throughout Utah that would love to bring this track into their circuit and to add races to it. I mean, if it made, if it came about.
So thank you very much. Were you going to make a copy of the petition or leave that with us?
Yes, I could leave that with you.
Okay.
And could I just state one more thing, that I'm not trying to make any money.
Okay.
I'm just trying to give people a place to ride. There's other members in the community, Kaylee Welch, some of you guys might be familiar with. her and her family ride, and they were they would love to help support this. And so, thank you guys for asking.
Oh, and thank you. Yes, we've heard. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I turned my phone on.
So, yes, if we could have,
Yes, ma'am.
if you want a copy of it.
No, I have a copy. I'll give you the original.
Okay.
And there was another petition that's been up for a year or so through the bike shop. I was unable to locate that. So this was one that I put up. I got all these signatures in 2 hours in a parking lot at the Spanish Trail Arena. So it just shows that, that there is a need for the, a want for this in this town. So thank you guys
Thank you.
for listening.
Thank you.
Do you want me to leave this?
Thank you very much. Any other citizens to be heard? Without any more citizens to be heard, we do not have any presentations. We will move to general business action items. Approving additions to the 2017 property tax abatement and cancellations. Chris Kaufman.
Chris Kaufman, Grande County Treasurer. Here to present the additions to the 2017 property tax abatements and cancellations. The impact, which is spread across all taxing entities, so including the school district and so forth, is about $12,000, of which about $2,000 will come back from the state in a reimbursement. So we've got a final impact of about $10,000. The council approved the majority of the abatements for this year in the October 4th meeting, and this just represents the stragglers and little additions that we've had coming in since my presentation at that time. There are a handful of applications that we received for disabled veterans, disabled low-income individuals, and low-income seniors. We had a few also cancellations for various regions, which are detailed in the list that I provided in your packet. And we pretty much went over what these abatements and cancellations are just a few months ago. So any questions about them?
Yes, Jalen? Yes?
I move to approve the additional 2017 property tax abatements and cancellations as presented, and authorize the chair to sign all associated documents.
Second.
Okay, motion by Councilman Hawks, seconded by Kurt Wells. I was going to call him Welch just because.
I've been called worse.
Okay, do we have any further discussion? Call for a vote. All in favor? Motion passes unanimously, 6-0. Thank you. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
Okay, we are moving to our next action item, approving proposed letter to the BOM requesting minor change to the Moab Resource Management Plan, travel plan to facilitate changes to the Hell's Revenge 4x4 trail in the addressing safety concerns at the trailhead. Andrea?
Hello. Just a second. Make sure I otherwise doing this. All right, I guess it'll work. Okay, thank you for your patience. Okay, Andrea Brand from Grande County Sand Flats, and thank you for the opportunity to come before you this evening. So in this proposed letter, Grande County's, in the letter, Grande County would be requesting that the Bureau of Land Management make a change to the 2008 Moab Resource Management Plan, travel plan on one section of the Hell's Revenge 4x4 trail to address safety concerns and maintain access. And if this proposal is granted, Sand Flats would coordinate the changes. So this slide shows, excuse me, the start of the Hell's Revenge Trail, and this is the area that we're requesting a change happen nearby. So driving over this rock fin, the fin is about 50 feet high at its highest point and 20 feet wide and 700 feet long. And of course it has drop-offs on both sides. Two-way traffic passes each other on this obstacle, And users include those driving 4x4 vehicles, Humvees, UTVs, ATVs, motorcycles, and pedestrians. And the number one safety concern of the commercial outfitters that use this trail is the issue of driving this fin with increased two-way traffic. This image represents the two-way traffic on the fin. The traffic flow is right on the same fin. And based on 2016 traffic counter data, 66% of the users, including all of the commercial outfitters, exit via this trailhead fin. The official exit road is not desirable due to the length and difficulty of that trail. Both Grand County Road Department Supervisor and BLM personnel and myself have gone out there and looked at that exit and concluded that improvements are really cost prohibitive. We would have to pave sections. We're looking at, you know, millions of dollars. So, and it's not the choice of 66% of our users right now want to come back out the trailhead. The commercial users especially want to come back out that way because it's makes it about a 2-hour tour, and that last part is just pounding to come out that way. So, based on the counter data that the BLM processed, there's an average of 191 vehicles per day from 2015 to 2016. And of this, 167 days saw 200 or more vehicles cross over this obstacle, and 34 days saw 400 or more vehicles drive this obstacle. Our counter data for 2017 was incomplete due to some vandalism of those counters. However, we've had a 7% increase in overall visitation in 2017 over 2016. And this slide here is showing the green line represents how many vehicles travel the entrance versus the blue line that shows how many vehicles exit on the exit road. So the proposal is to exit on the same fin on a lower section of that same fin. And so it would be a one-way entrance in green and a one-way exit in red. This is a rendering with a lot of little blue Jeeps, but it gives you an idea of the traffic flow. And as I said, they just be going in on the upper section and coming out on the little bit lower section of the same fin. And in this picture, this is showing going in, but on the, no, I didn't get a pointer, I'm sorry, but on the left-hand side, below the Jeep. Andrew? Oh, thank you. How does this work? Press the button.
Careful with the thing. Else there's holes.
Okay, so right here is the lower part of the fin that they would be coming back out. You can even see a little bit of the fence here that would be removed. And then this is the fence. Sorry, I did have a bigger slide of the fence. And then they would come up right in here. It's pretty wide here. And then at the top, this is kind of showing where this would need to be widened. This is, well, it has a little bit of an indentation here, and so we need to go into the rock 2 to 6 feet in a 40-foot stretch. And that is the proposed improvement there. I've already talked to a contractor, and I would be coming before you in a few weeks to get permission for that. And this is where they would descend, so we're looking back. But nothing on here is steeper than other things that they travel on the trail. And this is looking across the section that would become a gravel road. And this would feed right into, right here where we have these two little carsonites, it would feed right into this side of the trail. So right now there's actually 2 entrances to Hell's Revenge. I'm sorry that I don't have a slide with it, but there's one that we just put a concrete ramp on this winter, and then this one they would come out this way and leave the trail, and there wouldn't be any impact to the existing function of the parking lot. So it would flow really nicely. And we did explore other options over this past year, and I do have those outlined in the proposal that was given to the BLM for them to do the EA from. And a lot of entities were involved: the Sheriff's Department, the Road Department, BLM, outfitters, staff, myself, and this was the #1 choice.
Thank you. Yes, Curtis.
I move to approve the proposed letter to the BLM requesting change to the 2008 Moab Resource and Travel Management Plans to facilitate change to Hell's Revenge 4x4 trail and addressing safety concerns at the trailhead, and authorize the chair to sign all associated documents.
So, okay, motion by Curtis Wells, seconded by Evan Clapper. Any further discussion?
Quick question. Andrea, can you provide a frame of reference for me as far as if the county's just requesting like a minor amendment to these management plans? Does that kick off like a public process on the BLM side, or I mean,
It's already, the EA is already out right now
Okay.
online, so that's already, that will be finished by the 30th of January.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's not a, oh gosh, I don't have it in
Who
front of me.
spearheaded that? Was that the BLM itself, the EA, or who?
Well, what happens is I wrote up the proposal.
Okay.
The proposal went to the BLM. They start doing the EA.
Right.
And that's how we have an EA number in the letter. They kind of work like at the same
Yeah.
time. And then you folks approve the letter and send it in, and then that gives them permission to change the travel plan
Yeah.
to adopt this route.
Yeah. So an EA is okay.
Yeah, so it's all happening right now.
All right.
Any further discussion?
Is the variables in the width at the top there that would need to be removed?
We're going to make it 12 feet wide.
Okay, so
That's what the road department, that's what
Gotcha.
Jackson.
and
So some places it's 2 feet, some places, there's one place that's got to go in about, 6 feet.
and that contractor would be sensitive to visual impacts right above the booth there and all that. It's just
Yeah, they're going to, it's going to be cut vertically, of course, so there will be some visible impacts, but it should wear and disappear in a few years, really. It shouldn't be something real obvious, is what I've been told.
good.
Any further? Okay, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Vote passes 6-0. Thank you, Andrea.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, Rick Bailey on approving proposed emergency declaration declare Grande County a disaster area due to the recent drought, pending legal review.
Good evening. Well, we had a little moisture in December. It hasn't been great. 12% normal snowpack, 13% in the rain gauges. I think we're at the point that we're going to see the continuation of the projected zone of the drought move further to the north each week. You've seen the maps for the last couple of months come out of that Four Corners, and it keeps growing to the north. And the weathermen tell us that probably happened till April, and then the La Nina winter high will hopefully dissipate, and hopefully that'll shift some Pacific moisture into our area. But right now, agriculture people are the ones that are really seeing the impact. I have today a letter from BLM in the San Juan area that they've sent out, basically telling the graders to get ready for significant reductions in numbers. Talked to some ranchers out of Emery County last week. They're looking already at reducing numbers. So there is some federal aid out there for the agriculture producers if a declaration is made, and they do see that occurring. If there is another danger, I look at some of the culinary systems, particularly Thompson Springs is an area of concern. be met by the spring. So if we have a declaration in place and something would happen, we'd be able to move. The state has a huge war chest in their disaster budget. Unfortunately, they don't share that very well, but Carbon County was able last year to kind of figure out how to use that a little bit. The state hires themselves or their own contractors, and they're able to use those funds, whereas they don't ship those out. So my proposal is that you declare this. It's good for 30 days. Every 30 days it'd be on the consent agenda to redo it, continue it, as long as the conditions are such. And this was subject to legal review. So Andrew, if you have a chance to look at this.
I have not looked at it personally.
What's Grande County, accomplishing with this? Is it more of like a public notice? And
Yeah, it encourages the federal agencies that are on the agriculture side to do something to do this. There's some triggers that have to happen for all the agencies to actually make that assistance available.
Yeah.
So that's what would trigger it right now. And then if something would happen to a culinary system, we would be ready to request assistance from DEQ and other agencies to jump in and try to do something that way.
It's like being proactive and ready to jump as more than anything.
It's not gonna funnel any immediate dollars or programs down that are new, but depending on how long this happens, we'll be ready to go. San Juan declared in November.
Is the water district involved in these conversations?
They would do their own. The city would do their own. Is the way it works.
The data that we see in our water district meetings of of Ken's Lake levels, they don't. My recollection is they don't really directly correlate with the very first statement in this resolution with the snowfall levels. Like our average, we've had some up years and down years, but this year, last year in 17, we were way ahead of previous years. And it's got like a 5-year window, and
I think August is kind of where we saw the moisture kind of start slowing down. And if you look at San Juan, south of the city of Monticello, their rain gauges are at 13% in the current water year, so that's October on. The north is about 30%.
The first sentence in the resolution is experienced a severe lack of snowfall since 2012 and only negligible amounts of snow during the winter of 2015, 16, 17. So I guess what I'm saying is I could be wrong, but I don't believe that sentence really, that runs counter to the data that we review at the water board meetings on, runoff from the mountains. So, I don't want to.
Your dad is probably correct, and I didn't obliviate the right number there.
Yeah, that sentence basically says we have a huge problem dating back to 2012 in a nutshell, and it's important to me that if that's the case, that's the case, but the data's got to support that, and the council is going to be voting on this, and we don't have data in front of us. We just have a resolution with verbiage on it, so it's not a great position to be in as a board member. You don't want to not take the right stance on the drought issue, but you don't want to make statements that overcompensate or aren't supported by the data. So I guess my question with the water district is, where's the data that you reference when you're saying we've had a severe lack? Well, it says served. That's one thing we need to actually amend, as opposed to severe in the first paragraph. But a severe lack of normal snowfall and precipitation since 2012, and negligible amounts during the winters of 15, 16, 17. And I'm not a meteorologist, and I don't play one on television either.
Excuse me, Rick?
Well, they can amend it tonight if
We can amend it.
Yeah.
if you can get the right wording. You could just say in recent years if you know that that's the truth. It's a resolution. It's the intention behind the motion.
Yes, Andrew?
The issue is that last year was a big winter.
Yeah, I wish I would have brought my chart with me at the water district meetings.
Geyser Pass was the year before, right?
Yeah, and
That was
it's,
huge up there.
it's,
To refer to it, then it's
The
the
old,
average is a problem.
yeah, that we haven't had years, and
I
the,
hear that was big, but.
the Nature Conservancy District is also really concerned about it because they're seeing such a lack of growth of, on the, grazing.
Soil conservancy.
it's
Yeah.
important,
Soil.
the nature behind the motion, I get that,
Nature.
but it's important that we're making correct
Correct
statements.
statements, yeah.
Agreed,
And
agreed.
I'm not comfortable, I guess, because I realize we're having a moisture issue right now, and it's a problem, but the statistics that I've looked at on the water district, they don't, that doesn't tell the same story as dating back to 2012, but I'm not gonna get you guys ready to adopt this.
If we eliminated that first whereas, and then just kind of introduced the idea in the second whereas.
Where Grand County has experienced severe lack of, an average lack?
I mean, even if we eliminated that first whereas and just said, whereas drought conditions thus far in 2018 create a threat to human health and safety.
What do you think of that, Rick? Does that make sense or not?
I'm good with that. Like I say, this has to be redone or reapproved every 30 days to be legal. So
Okay.
as conditions warrant, we can
Yeah,
we
I
can
just-
massage this.
the public's aware of this, members of the press are in here, so you adopt something like this, it ends up on the front page of the paper, and if we don't have our facts straight, that's not something I want to do. I want to make sure that we do. Not to say that they aren't, but that's my job to question.
I think the rest of it kind of looks at it as this year, and I don't think anybody's going to argue against low snowfall for this year. So,
If that constitutes what's this designation we're looking?
the
Drought emergency.
If that constitutes that, then
but we had some figures from the guy over in the Grand Junction Weather Service. The
Meteorologist.
yeah, you had introduced some at another meeting that
And his updated slides are in here.
yeah, I think it's a good point to try to get ahead of the curve on this.
So maybe make a motion where we withdraw the first whereas.
Well,
Yes, Jalen?
if we're gonna do that, let me just try and get 3 typos out of the way.
Okay, thank you.
We can do this as amended. So, 1, 2, 3, 4 whereases down. The fourth whereas, middle line. At the very end, has forced many of the to import feed.
Them.
Them or many of the producers, whatever. Then next whereas, the continued lack of adequate precipitation, there's just a space there before the comma. If the public's gonna see this, they may as well know we read it, did our homework. Whereas and then there's, the next to the last whereas on that page, long range weather forecasts do not.
And your S on cats.
Okay, that's all I have.
it'd also be helpful to know exactly what we're triggering like this, as opposed to, you guys are just a place in the chain, but what are we enabling or what are we triggering by this resolution specifically?
I have to smile a little bit when you say that because San Juan's so detailed and they sent to the state and the state sent it back and said, make it more basic.
Yeah.
So I made mine less specific.
I guess not necessarily that the resolution needs to be specific, but just supportive information. I'm just asking the question generally, because you say this is going to set up, this is, kind of an action that, tees up other actions, what are those other actions? Where do we,
Immediately, you'd hope that the Federal Agricultural Department would kick in some of the programs that they have to help the agricultural producers. That can go anywhere from assisting with water hauling to feed, to hay, to grain.
This is what you're saying though is this is kind of specifically for the ag community.
Right now, I don't think there's an impact towards the culinary systems at this point, storage-wise. And that's kind of what the Weather Service had been indicating to us. Culinary water looks pretty good.
Yeah.
The ag side looks pretty bleak.
I see. That's helpful. The last time you spoke with us, you said the Weather Service wasn't as confident in the 180-day outlook as they are the 90-day outlook.
That's correct.
Has there been any change in either of those?
They don't have much credibility in the 180-day. It's a guess for them. Even the dartboard, they'll tell you that.
And that's a national entity?
Yeah, I like that we got the Farmer's Almanac.
Yeah. Usually it's more accurate, but not
Probably it's more
not this
accurate.
year. But yeah, 180 is a stretch.
That's pushing it.
Yeah, that's a
Sounds
long
like
way
90
out.
days pushing it a little bit too. No?
Well, it's a point.
Yeah.
That's probably where it breaks one way or the other, legitimately.
Well, let's strike. Well, I'll make a motion.
Okay. Remember,
I make a motion to approve the 2018 Grand County Drought Declaration and authorize with striking the first whereas paragraph and amending to correct the errors in verbiage by Councilwoman Hawks and authorize the chair to sign all applicable documents.
motion made by Councilman Wells and seconded by Councilwoman Hawks. Is there any further discussion? Call for a vote. All in favor? Passes unanimously, 6-0. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you.
Oh, and you're up for the next one.
Yeah, and I'm going to invite Matt to come up from a technical standpoint.
I'm just here for moral support.
Okay, this is approving the purchase and installation of new microwave hop from the Green River UCA site to Willow Basin, Grand County site, from Utah Communications authorized.
Let me just quickly explain our radio system that we use in the county. It's a microwave radio system. It generates basically off Bald Mesas where our main repeater site is, and by microwave it jumps down to our EOC building out here on South Highway 191 with hop, and then it hops back down to their dispatch center. Then there's one hop from Bald Mesa to the Green River site, which we lease a space in, and then it hops out onto Willow, out on the LaSalle.
This is one site, right?
Right. When this was put in 15 years ago,
Yeah.
it was state of the art at that point. Everybody was using radio wave to go with microwave, with digital and analog was state of the art, but it has basically worn itself out close to, and our hop from Green River to Willow has been sticking open more so the last 2 years than the 3-4 years I've been here, but right when that sticks, it just keeps basically an open mic, and it locks up the entire radio network on 4 or 5 channels. And we've known this is happening, and we've actually bought a part to attempt to fix it. It's a used part. It's a card that goes in. The company that made the microwaves has been bought out several times. It's now owned by a company in England. And when you put the card in the motherboard slot, you get 45 days. It starts clicking to get a code from the company in England to punch into that card. And if you get the code from them in 45 days, the system continues to work. If you don't get the code, the card's dead.
Yes.
I move to approve the purchase and installation of a new microwave hop from the Green River site to Willow Basin from Utah Communications Authority using equipment purchased from the Utah State Purchasing Contract and approving up to a 5-year lease to reimburse UCA for the costs and authorize the chair to sign all associated documents.
Do I have a second? Okay, all right.
Can I have one maybe clarification on it? If we can get UCA to hold that amount until the first of the year of 2019, then we wouldn't have to do a lease. We can use their money the entire year and then either go with a lease in a year or pay them out of what we owe them at that point in time and avoid having to go into a lease situation.
Did you get that?
Use their money instead of ours?
Yeah, I mean, to me, in the motion, that you still have the flexibility to, so.
They
that's
want to
understood.
help us. They need to get out there and get something done this summer. And if we have to wait till fall when we were going to do it, they're going to be late doing it too. So.
Yeah. What's the fund balance in the 9/11 fund?
As of last week, I think it was 180,000. Something.
So this will take it down almost by 40-some, 45, 50%.
We can use their money, and then, yeah. But it'll be coming in too during that period of time too. And the 911 funds are supposed to be increased, but this is really not 911 use per se, and I probably misstated that can be used for that. So that's kind of why I'm asking for the year out. If we can't pay it off, and
Oh, I see.
we'll come back in and ask for general fund monies.
So, okay. Well, that changes things.
So you're saying that it might not be able to be paid for through the 911?
It's really not a 911 expense. Radio and telephone are, 911 is really telephone.
Diana?
Just the total cost is
80 for the one hop.
One piece.
And then we'll use federal Homeland Security funds to do the other 3 hops that'll be available to us in the fall.
So,
UCA gonna fund it, or are they gonna?
They'll fund the Green River hop, the Willow hop. The rest of that we'll have to do when the money comes available.
so well, what do you want to do here? I mean, we need to identify where the money's coming from, and if it can't come from the 9/11 fund, then do you have a recommendation, Diana? Fund balance, or what can we do?
It's probably general fund expense.
Yeah.
Probably from emergency management.
Yeah.
Makes sense. For as much as they have to do in a minute.
So why don't we would probably need to postpone this then and take another shot at this, or in what?
Is it possible to postpone it?
Oh yeah, I think if we gave them an indication, this is going to take 6 to 8 weeks to even get configured.
Yeah. Well, I just think for us to approve it and to make that decision, it's important that we know where the money's going to come from and, how that impacts that budget. And the way the summary stated is it come from 9/11 fund. And if
And I
that's
guess
not,
I was hopeful when I was thinking of that, but the trip home from Salt Lake.
that's fine. I think, my recommendation is to get a better understanding of what fund is going to come from and how that affects that budget before we make a decision.
And Matt, you'd brought up the point of kind of having a bigger overview of all the kind of communication stuff and the system in place and what we need to maintain and what we might still be lacking. Is that?
Yeah, that's definitely accurate. There's a lot of moving parts, particularly when you start talking about connectivity out in the field, new technologies that are coming out, different federal programs, particularly something called FirstNet. If you guys ever heard of FirstNet, there's a lot of different pieces that are kind of unknown at this point. And my comment there was simply to put together a bit of a comprehensive plan that identifies all these particular pieces and sets forth something you can gauge goals by, to make sure that we're allocating and putting things into the right position, make making sure that everything's configured correctly before we go out and start doing it.
Yeah.
And then also, after everything's said and done, it gives you a nice thing to be able to look back on and be able to say that this is the way that the network's actually configured. These are your stakeholders, pain points, possible failures, redundant circuits. There's a lot of fingers that are
moving. The more integrated it could be, the better. So we're not having a bunch of independent systems floating around.
Well, there's certainly always going to be independent systems that are going to have to be interoperable with each other. And I'd just like to be able to have something that brings that together into a bit of a strategic plan to move forward with it.
Do we have any plan like that in place? Would this be the start of something like that?
In the cloud.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've got a bunch of stuff here, he's got a bunch of stuff there, and we've got pieces here and there. I'd just like to be able to have something that identifies exactly what all those pieces are, so when we start talking about all these, again, this is mostly from a technical standpoint, of where I look at it, it says this particular piece is failing, and who are the stakeholders for that, and how does all this impact as it comes down?
I think that's a good idea.
So,
Do we have a second on the floor?
yeah, we had a second.
So if we can vote on this, if the vote doesn't pass, then we can, get this again on the agenda when we have more specifics to, to the finances.
Does that sound?
Sorry, I kind of lost some of that punting the payment till 2019.
I think UCA would carry that till 19 for us. They'll buy the equipment, install it for us,
But not give us a bill until.
and not give us a bill till 19.
For the 82,000?
Because you have to consider with UCA too, this is a critical hop for them too, because it's not just us running on that link out there to Willow. You've got UHP and
State road.
State Road.
What is UCA?
It's a Utah
Utah Communications Authority. It's an independent service district of the state.
So do you need an action from the council for them to go ahead and pull the trigger on the equipment?
They would order the equipment as soon as we tell them to do it.
Well, if they'll float it till 2019, then.
We should do it.
Are we sure they'll do that?
Yeah, I'm sure they will. Yeah, one reason that Willow is so critical versus any of the other is it's the only site that doesn't have internet at the site, and it's not going to have internet at the site for some time, if ever.
It doesn't have a redundant link in now.
I make a substitute motion.
Yes.
I make a motion to approve indication to UCA that if they purchase the equipment and float the costs until 2019, we will make the necessary arrangements between now and then, 2019, to repay the cost of the equipment.
You'd sign my paycheck on that one, wouldn't you, council?
I mean, they just need, basically, you just need something from the council that says, hey, if you guys buy this, we'll figure this out between now and 2019, correct?
Certainly helps coming back to them too.
Second.
Getting the funding, making sure that.
So substitute
This was
motion.
their idea, this wasn't ours. I mean, they hit me up last week and said, we do this for you, would you let us? They were talking probably a fault repayment, but I think they'll go to.
Go ahead, substitute motion by Curtis Wells, seconded by Rory Paxman. Is there any further discussion?
It sounds like something that we need to do. The equipment's old and it's antiquated. For us, we need to, when it's time for us to pay for the equipment, we need to, go through the necessary process. But hopefully this is sufficient to get the ball rolling.
I like the idea of coming up with a strategy so it's not just reactive, but because I'm sure all these technologies are going to change in the next 10 years.
You can write a check on that one.
Yeah, so I just don't want to be too reactive,
Well, this is definitely being proactive too. Because we know that the system's failing. We know that there's parts that are becoming less and less available, and we'd like to be able to get it fixed before it all hits the fan, and we really are coming in saying,
Do you need the motion repeated? Do you have that?
I think I got it. I'll listen to it again. I got the gist of it.
Would be nice if they would just float us forever.
I know it.
So
They've been awful good to us in a lot of ways.
I will call for a vote. All in favor of the substitute motion, raise your hand. Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you.
It wasn't pretty, but we're moving forward.
Okay.
Let me
Once-
just keep on going.
You keep on going.
Let me
Approving
tell you
new
a little-
911 hardware and software system for Centurylink.
Councilman Wells asked who Utah Communications Authority is. The easiest way to describe that entity is they were the state arm that built the microwave or the radio system for the 2002 Olympics. They put that system in with the promise that then they would go out and bring that radio system to the world. Well, the Olympics came and they forgot the rest of the world. And so while they were doing that, they were transposed from UCAN to UCA and given the responsibilities for the 911 program in the state. They're the entity that receives a portion of the amount on your telephone bill every month that it comes. And their goal by the legislature was to fund 911 throughout the state to be on an equal basis. You know, if you remember about 2 years ago, their bookkeeper absconded with well over $1 million of the funds, caused the board to be removed. The 27-member board was in place for 3 years, which I had the duty and pleasure of serving on that 27-person board. We were fired in last year by the legislature and replaced with a brand new board of 9 members as they try to get their feet on the ground and decide what they're going to do. Meanwhile, counties like Grande County, San Juan County, Emery County are on the A tier of their telephone 911 equipment. What it is computer equipment, software, hardware. And ideally, this would have been replaced at 5 years interval. That's about the life of it. But with the things that happened at UCA, they asked us to go to year 6, year 7, and we're at year 8 coming. We've been down December 14 days to one position for lack of equipment. The system is precarious at best. It's waiting to fail. And so the last board meeting last week, I was energetically awaiting their decision to start funding processes again, projects again. And their decision was we're going to wait until at least July to fund anything else. And we're already behind. 10 applications have already been approved. And our system's not going to last another 1.5 to 2 years while that board decides whether or not they can fund this or not. So our decision to hear today is that we need to replace that. San Juan's making that same decision this week. I think we stand a great chance in August, September, October as that board gets their feet established and they decide what to do, that they'll pay 90% to 100% of this project like they have previously. But they're not funding anything right now, and they're not going to. I don't think we can wait.
And this is a 911 fund. It will come from that
Yes.
fund.
Yeah. We have an opportunity to move into the next generation system, and that's what's called as next generation, next gen. Allow for people to text 911 rather than just call. It gives us certified repairmen out of Grand Junction to come and services we don't have now. I don't know.
There's a lot of
You see all this gray hair in his.
That's not just my kids.
So the thing with this is, it sounds like the request is more than what's in the balance of the 911.
We'd need to lease it over 5 years. And what I proposed is that if the state doesn't come up with reimbursement, then we'll pay for it out of the 911 funds on a monthly basis. And we'll pay our way and do it. And if they do come in and give it to us, then we'll reimburse ourselves that money.
We hope they do, because
everybody in the state's counting on them doing it. Everybody else is in the same boat we're at.
That's a lot of money. 195,000.
220 of these units have to be replaced
How many?
today. 220 of them statewide at a cost of 70 to 80,000 per piece. Now you know why the lobbyists are involved with this decision and why it's stuck in the mud.
Yeah, oh yeah. All right.
The only other thing I might say is that this is also part of a larger working group that involves our neighboring counties, particularly Carbon, Emery, San Juan. Right now we have a paired system with San Juan, to where if a 911 call here doesn't get answered in a certain amount of time, it rolls over to San Juan. So their dispatchers answer, same thing for them, then ours answers. This consolidates equipment, and instead of each particular site having to stand up huge servers and racks like we have traditionally in the past, this puts in centralized nodes that again fail over back and forth, not only operationally between us and San Juan, but this will fail back and forth between us and Carbon and Emery as well. So it certainly does put together a higher level of interoperability than we've had in the past, and it certainly is a cost savings significantly to not only us but all parties involved because of that, because we're sharing.
I'd entertain a motion.
I move to approve the purchase of a new 911 hardware and software system from Centurylink and approve up to a 5-year lease to own agreement with funding coming from the county's 911 funds and authorize the chair to sign all applicable documents.
Second, Greg Halliday. Motion by Curtis Wells, seconded by Greg Halliday. Is there any further discussion? Yes.
I would just note this is on the Utah State bid. So we can purchase directly off of that.
Which is why it didn't have to go out to bid. It would have been a process.
Oh, okay, thank you. Okay, any further discussion? Call for a vote. All in favor? Passes 6-0. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Approving job descriptions for new positions as redrafted and reformatted by Personnel Systems and Services. John West.
Hey, John.
Kidding.
Hey, everybody, how we doing?
Long time no see.
I guess. Okay, as you recall, I'm just going to give a brief synopsis. You've already read the agenda summary, I assume. We approved job descriptions so the Personnel Systems could do the study for the 2 jobs in the planning, the Community and Economic Development Director and the Community and Economic Development Specialist, which are Zachariah and Caitlin. Those came back from Mike Swallow, and Councilman Wells and Councilman Trim met with Zachariah regarding these two job descriptions and had no changes, of course, on Caitlin, and some minor ones on Zachariah's job description, which is included in your packet here. There's about, I think your copy will have the changes in blue, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct? Those are the 3 minor changes on Zachariah. There were no changes on Caitlin, as I stated earlier. And so what we would like to do is get the approval was to be included in the comp study. Now we need to get approval to actually have the job descriptions that he has sent back and that they've gone through, along with Curtis Wells and Patrick Trim, to have those included in the official job descriptions of Grande County. So that what we're asking for is approval to approval for those 2 new job descriptions.
So this kind of this confused us in our agenda meeting, or it confused me. So, and I'm still maybe not 100% clear, but so we approved, I want to make sure I understand this right. We approved job descriptions for purposes of the survey starting in the summer. Amendments to those job descriptions to get them up to date, in our format that we've used as a county. Mike Swallow then converted those job descriptions into a format that he uses.
And that all the county job descriptions have been changed to.
Okay, hold on. Because I'm going to get confused easily on this.
Okay.
It's happened to me 3 times. And so his job descriptions are what, more in line with like the industry? Is it a format that just he uses during evaluations, or?
Well, it's a condensed format actually, where he takes the job descriptions that were presented and summarizes them, comes up with the key points that should be on those job descriptions, but in some cases it would reduce them from 5 pages to 2 pages or even longer.
So simplify them?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
and so of the job descriptions we sent him in the old format or the current format, the county format, was the Community and Economic Development Director and the Community and Economic Development Specialist were not included in that? Is that correct?
They were not included. They were included merely to study what those salaries and wages should be. They were not officially adopted by the county council.
And so this action here is to adopt these as the county job descriptions. But there's also interest in adopting the other job descriptions, correct, that have been converted from the old format into the new format as the new job descriptions for the county.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't make past this evidently in my
No,
mind.
you didn't.
Why are we adopting these specifically as Grand County job descriptions now, and not all of them in this agenda item or in this meeting?
Well,
I
the
don't
others are
understand
coming.
why
The
we're
others
separate.
are coming. These are just so we can get them through the payroll system right now.
Okay, that's the answer.
There's a little bit more of an answer, just that somehow the Community and Economic Development Specialist job description did not make it through the process with you guys. The one that did for Caitlin's position was Community Development Specialist, not Community and Economic Development Specialist. So you've never even seen this Community and Economic Development Specialist for Caitlin until this packet. So it's another reason that those two, they're two brand new positions. This takes them out of the hypothetical job description and officializes them, because now we have official positions.
Okay.
So that was the reason these two.
Okay,
I move
motion.
to approve the proposed job descriptions for new positions as redrafted and reformatted by Personnel Systems and Services for Community and Economic Development Director, grade 25, and Community and Economic Development Specialist, grade 12.
Seconded, okay, motion by Curtis Wells, seconded by Evan Clapper. Any further discussion? Yes.
Now I have to say something. On all the blue places on Zachariah's job description, I mean, in writing a job description, I would closely follow form. And so to accomplish that in this case, I would take the word effectively off of the front of all those blue sentences. And it then makes it more uniform with the rest of all of those projects.
I'm good for that.
Okay. So there's that. And then on page 2 of Zachariah's, in the last large paragraph, it mentions city employees and city ordinances. Was that purposeful because we want them to collaborate, or should that have been county ordinances and county employees?
The amendments, that Patrick made, the amendments that I saw that Patrick
I'm assuming
were-
his were in the blue.
were very, very minor. And I can't really attest to them, but.
I mean, I think that needs to be county.
Where is this
Both
at?
of those. So
Right
The
under
ability
under
to?
ability to, right
Yes.
here. Right here.
So change those two to county, and then
Yep.
same thing in,
I'm not seeing city on ability
Right here.
to.
yeah, and the other job descriptions on her page 2, first big paragraph, working knowledge of, next to last sentence in that paragraph, pertinent city functions, needs to be changed to county. And that's all I found.
I don't have, the copy of Zachariah's job description that I have doesn't have the same verbiage that was in my packet for under ability to.
It's right, the first one behind the agenda summary. There was a whole pile of them. I assume that the other ones were the original
Yeah.
before the blue line. Yep.
I have 2 copies of the specialist position, but I don't have a job description in your format for, so this is yours.
This is here.
Must be a testimonial to using.
That's what she was wondering. Did we put that in because we want to collaborate with them, or is it in there? Should it say county ordinances and county employees?
I don't know what happened.
Yeah, I guess the way it reads to me is you would want that to say county.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. So that would be the other change. Anything else? Jaylen, you're so good
No,
at
you
this.
got them in both of those job descriptions, though?
So I've got
Yes.
something. So I think that you all might want to have an understanding of where grade 12 came from for the specialist position.
Okay.
So do you want to
Go
take a
ahead.
stab at it? Or?
Go ahead.
Well, I'm not actually positive, but because I asked you to fill that out and you did. And so, but here's what I think I came up with grade 12 also. So it's from the compensation study though. And so I don't know if you guys want to use that. I don't know if we're using that for anything, but it had the range, hourly rate. Let's see if I can locate it again. Community and Economic Development Specialist, the hypothetical job description of $17.81 per hour was the minimum, up to $26.71 max. So we looked at $17.81 minimum. If you go to the step and grade chart, which we still operate under, $17.81 at a step 1, which would match her level of experience, is the grade 12 at $17.80 or 8032. So call it $17.80. So it's a match for grade 12 step 1.
Okay.
But I think these are questions. I'm just saying that they're not just random
the
grades,
logic,
but it's
yeah.
important. And unfortunately, these new job descriptions don't even say it doesn't have grade on there, which I'm a little concerned about, because when we go to recruit, how do we know what grade it's going to be at? I don't know. It's just that's a whole nother matter for internally.
What are your thoughts on that, John?
Well, it's already in, all of those are already contained in the payroll system, so they've all been converted to a grade and step, because we never changed that system. They're already in the payroll system. We already know where all these employees are going to be at and where they should be at. So even though they're not necessarily right on the job description, they are already included in the payroll system.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this being a brand new one, though.
Yeah.
John, what's the primary driver for the council to adopt the new formats? Just because we feel like it's a more modern format, industry standard format for job descriptions?
Yep. And that actually, this way we can compare to the other places in the state of Utah and they're standardized as far as those job descriptions are concerned. So
you think it's a good move?
Oh, I do, absolutely.
Okay.
One other quick thing, policy was followed, although it was a little bit out of order, to do an internal job announcement that John took care of for both of these positions. They're brand new positions. Our employee handbook says we have to put it out at least internally for 1 week. So that has happened, but you all made the position effective April 1st with those 2 individuals in mind. So
January 1st.
I mean January 1st. So they are being paid at the rate they're supposed to be paid at the higher rate effective January 1st. So we had to come back later, as it turned out, after the fact, to get the process to make the announcement. There's no issue. I just wanted you to know that.
Okay, have a motion?
Yeah, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
A second. Any further discussion? Call for a vote. All in favor? Passes 5-0. Councilwoman Jaylen Hawks is presently out of the room. You, approving volunteer appointments to the districts and boards.
Haven't we already done? What does this keep coming around for?
Because it's hard to get people to do this. Okay.
Well, we have the airport board. I'll go first, I guess, huh?
Mhm.
Well, we had 3 applicants. The airport board chose 2 because that's all we had openings for. The the other gentleman was a real good applicant, and I hope he reapplies in the future. But I move to approve the reappointment of Bill Groff and Jody Patterson with a term expiring 12/31/2021 to serve on the airport board and authorize the chair to sign all associated documents. Man, that seems like so long.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Passes 6-0. Now we move to historic preservation.
That is, let me catch up here.
Evan Copper.
So Jody, being the good citizen that he is, also ran to be on the Historical Preservation Commission. He's currently serving with them, and I think he's even been nominated to be the director as well. So, the chair, thank you. With that, I move to approve the appointment of Jody Patterson as recommended with the term expiring 12/31/21 to serve on the Historical Preservation Commission and authorize the chair to sign all associated documents.
Motion by Evan Clapper, seconded by Greg Halliday. Any further discussion? All in favor? Noxious Sweet.
And that was that unanimous?
Unanimous, yeah. Passed 6-2.
Yeah, for the weed board, we have 2 applicants, and I move to approve the appointment of Jordan Davis and Tony McCose to serve on the Noxious Weed Control Board with the term expiring 12/31/2021 and authorize the chair to sign all associated documents.
Seconded. Motion by Roy Paxman, seconded by Greg Halliday. Any further discussion? Call for a vote. All in favor? Motion passes unanimously 6-0. Consent agenda.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
And authorize the chair to sign all associated documents.
Or motion by Jaylen Hawk, seconded by Rory Paxman. All in. Any further discussion?
Yes.
Okay.
I just, in the future, I don't really think that, even though it's probably a no-brainer, unanimous vote, I don't think that resolutions belong on the consent agenda, especially when you look at the last page of the resolution that says, whereas County Council has heard and considered all evidence and testimony presented. I know there's none that anybody out there wants to present, but it just doesn't seem like good form to me to put something like that on the consent agenda. But having said that, for the future, I'm prepared to vote.
Help me remember that.
Well, I've got a note here. I did speak with the Community Development Department because I had the same concern. I didn't think about that last, having heard all testimony and evidence or whatever. But the reason is because it is a subdivision that's already in place, and so there are just minor lot changes within it. And so it could go either way. We could, in the future, always have it on the regular agenda, and that would just take care of it. But I also was curious about it.
There's got to be something in state code or something that outlines consent agenda, because that seems like a pretty obvious place to tuck things that you don't want to be deliberated on and whatnot. So is there, as opposed to setting some kind of precedent, is there, can we look to code or something to kind of?
I don't know, maybe, yeah. The consent agenda, to my understanding is if you're expecting it to be, a no-brainer, it's unanimous, you're expecting it so that you don't have to deliberate on it, but yet all the information is there. That's in your policies and procedures. I haven't seen anything in state code, but I also haven't searched for it, so I could do that.
Well, a lot of times we run into trouble, like, I don't agree with things all the time, and it's just an issue of, well, that's the way we've done it in the past. Well, is that the way it's supposed to be done? I agree with Jay Lynn, it's just that, there's lots of rules and regulations for these things,
So we should.
public meetings and whatnot, so.
So maybe do some investigation.
Yeah, I would like to, on that issue, the consent agenda be really comfortable on exactly what belongs in there and doesn't, possible, as opposed opposed to leaving it to judgment on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
That said, I'm ready to vote on it too.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Passes unanimously. 6-0. We are now on discussion of calendar items and public notices.
With Brandy being out sick, and yes, it is the flu.
It's the real flu?
Confirmed, both of them, yes, both
Oh,
of them
no.
have the flu. I will do my best. So, on January 18th, just this coming Thursday, is when the Grande County will be in front of the governor's office and his team to present the county's rural economic development plan. That's pretty exciting. The following Thursday, the 25th, is our next meeting, as you heard earlier today, for Association of Local Governments. Then, that's all I have really for January. Anybody have anything, changes or anything for January? February the 8th is the County Officials' Day at the Legislature. Let's see, I thought there was some, oh yeah, I forgot to circle February 2nd. That's Governor's Office of Economic Development Rural Day on the Hill. Those are events you certainly can think about attending, and we can help with any registrations or travel or whatever. We have another holiday. February the 19th is President's Day, so the county offices will be closed. And then there's a sneak peek there for March 3rd, which is the National Association of Counties something, legislative something or other. So,
That's March 3rd.
Yeah, that's on that very bottom corner. So we'll know more about that next time.
Yeah.
Anybody have any changes or additions for February? So then Zachariah, as part of the Dark Skies group, asked me to check with you guys, and we can do this by email as well, but they want to see if we can pin you down for a preferred date due to the moon phase for a dark sky event where you all and other local public officials would gather around, and it would be a cowboy dinner, or what do you call it, a Dutch oven dinner. But it would be, the idea would be to talk about issues and opportunities surrounding dark skies. It would be at one of the ball fields, high school or Center Street here. And there is Colorado Plateau River Guide Lars Harr, H-A-R-R, of Oars. He has Stars with Lars trips. He is paying for and preparing this dinner. April 9th, though, is a Monday. Again, it's the preferred date because of the moon phase. So, in other words, it's probably a darker night, I'm guessing. Otherwise, they're looking at March 12th or March 15th, a Monday or a Thursday.
What's the businessman that's paying for this?
Lars Harr, H-A-R-R, of Oars.
He operates a business in town?
Oars.
Oars.
A guide on the river.
Okay.
Doesn't he, is the owner of
I don't.
And he's a member of this Dark
Ours isn't
Skies
like
group.
locally owned.
it? It isn't.
They're all over the West. Idaho.
He doesn't. So, but the preferred one is the 9th?
Do we have some more commitments?
Okay. We got.
So I got Jaylyn, Mary,
What's the
Evan.
date?
The 9th,
April 9th, Monday, at night.
Be at night so we can see the dark skies.
What does that? Well,
Or it has to be down. Just, you sent us that article.
yeah, Tori. I guess just when you have businesses stepping in, paying for lunches and stuff that leads to policies, it just kind of a little bit. I don't want to make any preconceived judgments, but I don't know enough about it.
Well, this gentleman is a member of the
He's a member of the committee.
member of the Dark Skies group locally.
I see.
So, and they meet pretty regularly, at least monthly. They're in here, and there's a
I
big
see.
group of them. Yeah.
So he's
I
just
guess
a
he
committee
just-
member.
It's a local
or
group,
something.
Just
yeah.
stepped up to pay for it.
So I have Jaylyn, Mary, and Evan.
Wait, say the date again?
April 9th, Monday.
9th. Okay.
What, did it say what time?
No.
I'll put it on mine.
Okay. Well, then we'll get some reminders out. So that's great.
That's all it is.
Okay. So let's see, moving right along.
Okay.
Employment opportunities, we have the usual EMT basics, part-time, Grande County Sheriff's Office Assistant Food Service Manager in the jail, the corrections officers, and then also we have Sand Flats Rec area for a Technician 1, which is a seasonal position, and also a Tech 1 intern. Public hearing announcement, this would be for our special meeting January 30th. This is the CDBG that you heard about today. Public hearing, it's called the initial public hearing. It has to be done, even though it's not going to be specific to an application. But we may also have, I believe Ben Riley mentioned that they are looking at an application as well. So there's Seahaven has an application the county would be sponsoring, and then Housing Authority of Southeastern Utah may have one. Anyway, that's a 9 o'clock public hearing on January 30th.
And are we supposed to be?
Yeah.
Yes, that is a confirmed meeting, special meeting. We also have a CIB application for you all to approve that day for EMS facilities. And it seems like there's another...
Is it 9 o'clock you said?
Uh-huh.
It doesn't have a time on the announcement.
Oh, dear. You know what? This announcement is verbatim from the CDBG training. So that is... You know what? I'm glad you said something because it is 9 o'clock and we know that. So I will get that sorted out. I think that the paper is not printed till tomorrow. So
be here at 9 a.m.
Yes. Okay, so then we have special events. Not a whole lot happening in this time of year, but January 27th, Archer's Ultra, which is new. It's a Mad Moose run. Pardon? No, that's the name of the organization. And then Moab Red Hot, 55K and 33K on February 17th, and that permit is completed. The other permit is in process. Let's see, I did want to let you all know that some board application that we still need applicants for the Boundary Commission.
That always needs...
And I mean, we're still advertising, so I think we still need this for the Moab Mosquito Abatement District and the Rec District.
We approved one. Okay,
Maybe we're okay on that. It's still, so this is...
Boundary Commission.
And the boundary. Oh, all right.
But there's a resident rep for the Boundary Commission that we also need.
I thought we approved some. She's gone.
Well,
we'll find out.
I might not be updated completely on that.
I feel like they're up to par. I feel like they might have twisted somebody's arm last time I was there.
On which one?
Somebody just needs to be...
Which one?
The mosquito.
Oh, Mosquito Bay.
There was
well, you guys make the appointments to their board.
Or to make a recommendation.
They make the recommendation.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
Somebody might have been up but not turned out.
Or perhaps they just haven't turned in their paperwork.
Okay, well, that's all I've got.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'll be glad when Bryony's back.
Okay, discussion on developing Grand County's legislative priority plan, Councilman Wells.
So we have a kind of a review process that's ongoing because bills are still being filed, and actually the bills that we've already discussed that we're interested in weighing in on our following are still not filed. So we're scheduling a meeting for late next week with Zachariah and getting it scheduled with Carmela at the city to kind of sit down and hopefully get a step further to finalize what we see is our collective agenda. And then that document would come back to the council for adoption, potentially on the 30th of January, if not the 6th of February. The 6th of February wouldn't be too late.
Yeah,
there's still plenty of time, but there's a lot of bills that are being filed, but it's just going to take some time to continue to pick through them. And we haven't had the opportunity for all of us to get together to discuss the specific agenda. So this week's busy. We're all headed to Salt Lake. So it's being scheduled tentatively for mid to late next week. If anyone has a bill that's popped up that they want to be on the agenda or something that catches their eye, just forward it to me or Zachariah, and we're happy to review it and include it on the agenda. But in the meantime, we're just still filtering through and analyzing all the bills to see what should or shouldn't be on our radar. Ruth sent out a link, or provided a link last meeting for the state website, but there's also like a UAC and the League of Cities and Towns kind of did a legislative kind of collaborative item, but they haven't really gone in and reviewed the bills. It's kind of more high level. The UAC legislative committee meetings that I'll be sitting in on are the Thursdays during the session. So Thursday morning, the UAC legislative committee will review bills and kind of point the lobbyists in the right direction. So obviously there's amendments and bills change, and it's kind of there's a lot of moving targets. And so as I'm going through that process, I'll be reporting back to you guys as far as, what's changed, what's passing. But as far as the agenda that we adopt as a body and carry up there, it needs some more work.
I talked to the mayor of Castle Valley, and they're having their meeting, I believe it is tomorrow, and they will discuss what their priorities are and what they're concerned about and get back to us.
Cool.
So I did follow up on that. But Jasmine said she would get that to us.
I think there's a likeliness that the city and the county may differ on issues, but that's ultimately up to us to decide. So, the way I see this playing out is we'll each have our own agenda, which is common, but a lot of those issues, probably most of them we'll agree on. But there's some things that come up, like Mike Noel press release a bill that involves cities' abilities to regulate water in certain areas, and it has the League of Cities and Towns up in arms. It's something they'll be real passionate about, but doesn't really affect us. So as those bills start being filed, it'll take shape. So the 30th or the 6th, we'll be able to kind of report back a list and kind of walk through it as a council and hopefully adopt it.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to make a comment that the legislative committee, I think that they are still video broadcasting those. Do you know, Councilmember Wells?
It may be.
If they are, this is partly why we purchased this system here, so that they could tie in and you all could attend in an easy way.
Yeah.
Prior to us having this, we were setting it up and arranging it through the USU Extension Office, I think it was. I can't remember. But anyway, hospital. Oh, that's right. It was the hospital. I remember now. The old hospital. Anyway, and then the new hospital. But if you all want us to do all that, it's a weekly thing. We'd have to schedule the conference. The council chambers would have to do a little work, but we're happy to do that if that's... If we know that people are coming. We don't want to do all that and then nobody show.
Is it interactive or is it?
I
I think it's just a live feed.
Yeah, I think it is just.
But you can text me.
You got to watch what they're
Not interactive. So.
Yeah, it's pretty. That's where for a county official, that's definitely the the way to keep your finger on the pulse of those UAC legislative committee meetings.
And Diane just reminded me that it's also available on your computer since it's not interactive. So maybe that's why we haven't done it so much lately, because it's easier for people to just do it from their computers.
That's the committee that I'm going to be dealing with, trying to get the UAC legislative committee on board with our agenda. So pitching them and explaining to them why the issues on these bills, they need to adopt those, and UAC needs to put their stamp on it. So it's a large, county officials testifying on why our lobbyist needs to work on these bills on these specific stances on our behalf. Like the short-term regulation bill that we opposed, UAC actually supported that last year, and that went through their legislative committee, and there wasn't really anyone there to provide context from a county like ours of why this is a bad thing. So
it's good. I'm glad we're doing this. This is a good move. Any further discussion on legislative? It was decided because we went through the policies and procedures, not this year, but the year before, and so for members of the county council have not, had an opportunity to really discuss and learn about our policies and procedures. And so we were going to try to just spend less than 10 minutes, hopefully less than 5, on each policy and procedure. And the first one was on county members' participation in county boards, commissions, and committees, and local and special service district boards. I first was wondering, after reading these, does anyone have any questions or concerns about the policy? I do know, when was it? It was before I was elected. We did have an issue where a board member went in as a substitute and then attempted to participate in a closed meeting. Wasn't that what happened, Andrew? And it created a pretty big stink. That's putting it mildly. And so, it is important to know that you can send someone in your stead, but if it's a voting committee, it's, you're not allowed to really vote. But like if you go to the planning commission where you're not a voting member, well, then that's not going to become an issue. And of course, if you're not the one that has been appointed by the county council, you cannot attend the closed sessions. So that's what I thought was the most important thing. Otherwise, it was pretty straightforward from what I could see.
The agenda summary says questions have come up in regards to what council members' roles and requirements are. Are there any concerns that we need to be sensitive to? Is there any things specific that a concern that's been brought up? Or?
It's not been so much lately, but for a while there were certain boards that we would never hear about, and that we weren't getting reports on.
Oh yeah.
That it is very important that we know what's going on in the boards, so that when something comes up, we're not blindsided by it or surprised.
Well.
Yes. Yes.
I probably know the answer to this, but if you're a non-voting member on a board and you're at a meeting where they don't have a quorum and they ask you to participate, is that the meeting's just canceled?
Because you have not been appointed by this body to be on that board as a voting member.
Well, some of the boards, just the council representative isn't an actual voting member.
Yeah.
Many of them.
Yeah.
Many of them, like the travel, the airport, you don't vote.
Airport
Right?
board, but the city can't.
Funny, since it's our money that's paying for it.
That's really strange, actually.
That should get changed.
I don't know why we do that.
Well, it should be changed.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. That should be changed.
The thing about it that I see, I definitely think that.
What are you talking about?
Well, just in general, our form of government, I think, drives the need for special service districts. When you have commissions, you have commissioners that have their own. They all have 5 to 6 departments they manage. So you've got a commissioner that manages EMS and the weed department and Parks and Rec. In some counties there's commissioners that have a golf course under their portfolio. In our form of government, we Ruth's the executive, and what's the word I'm looking for? Our executive authority, we give it to you. We delegate it to you. So when you have EMS is a perfect example. You have a county department that in many counties would be under the direct management of an elected official. Now you're transitioning that from an elected official to a board of volunteers. And so, even though we're serving as liaisons to this board, we're just liaisons. And if we're not reporting back to the body on the ins and outs of that board, bad things happen and they, kind of float out there, and the financial management can get weary. So, I don't think it's this is our form of government, but the need for all of these districts with volunteers it can become very messy and not an effective structure if we don't have sound representation and members from the county that are actually applying, somewhat of a management mindset as opposed to just collecting information and bringing it back to the council. So I agree with it, and I think there's things that are not reported to that, that should be. So I think it's a good thing.
Any further? And I will take responsibility for this. I realize we do not have on our agenda county council reports. We somehow missed that.
It's right after public hearings.
It's where?
Right after public hearings.
General
council. I missed it. There are no public hearings. I was looking for in light print, not dark print, I'm sorry. One of those visual things. I went, oh, it should be right after Z. There are no public hearings, general council reports, and future considerations. Roy.
Well, I missed the weed board and I couldn't really hear what they were saying online.
So yeah, the weed board is looking at ways. There was a presenter from UDAF, Utah Department of Agriculture and Food, I believe is where he was, where there's a county, now I can't remember which county, but somewhere in Utah where they're looking at finding more sustainable ways rather than just having seasonal grant staff part-time to go get trained. They have to learn everything about the different noxious weeds, where they are, what they look like in their growing seasons. They have to have a pesticide license. There's a lot of wasted money and effort every season.
And then they're seasonal and they quit. So all that money's just basically gone, right? That's
right, and so there's a way to make it a grant-funded full-time position. Of course, this would be for 2019 budget, but so there was a presentation that made it sound like it was a much more sustainable way to really do the job, and it is a state requirement that counties deal with these noxious weeds, which is why we have a department and everything that we have around it. Anyway, that was the gist of that part of the meeting that I attended anyway. Yeah, I thought it was kind of good. So.
Thanks for being there.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't attend the cemetery because it was conflict with the planning board. I made sure they had a quorum, and I found out looks like they're moving forward. There's going to be a public hearing about selling the Elgin Cemetery, and in the agreement they will never use the property for anything but a cemetery, for so that we're protected. They're not going to sell. We're not going to give them the land at a real reasonable price and then have them turn it into a motel. So that won't happen. It'd be just like our cemetery that the BOM gave us, and we can never do anything else with it. Well, that's 10 acres, and right now there's only 5 acres that are that are presently being used, but eventually probably the whole thing would. But we felt it was really important to protect us and not have them think, oh boy, we're getting a great deal here. I'm still curious as to why they want to take it over. They've been getting such a good deal all these years. But anyway, they are, and it's going to be under their expense. At the Planning Commission meeting, there was one thing that was voted on a zone change out near, past the airport, near isn't it Mill Creek? Or no, Mill Canyon, yes, Mill Canyon. And a favorable was sent to us to a favorable recommendation, but it was like a 4-3 vote, so I'm sure we'll be hearing a lot about it. And that was what happened, was the major things that happened there. And there's a committee now formed that hopefully by the end of, before the tourist season comes up and the city does their bids for whether or not they're going to stay with monument waste, they have to put it out. 99% they will, because nobody else is going to be able to afford to come in and take over. Well, see, they were able to because they were able to buy the property from the Hawks. But for someone else to come in and compete with them, that our property's too expensive, but still it has to go out for bid. So they're waiting on a lot of the decisions that will happen with Recycle Center is kind of contingent on that, on what happens there. And because Monument Waste is looking more at going towards collecting the recycle and perhaps dealing with it at their site rather than at the solid waste. Well, anyway, that's all up in the air. That's not important, but a committee has been formed that will be working on it. Kaylin Jones and Kevin Fitzgerald will be working with county and city and to really come up with an idea of how we can move forward and deal with our recycle, because it's a problem. It's a difficult, complicated problem. So those are the 3 committees I have to report on. Curtis.
Let's see. I wasn't able to attend the water district meeting last week. We had a UDOT scoping meeting today, so it's where we're at in the process is we developed a criteria to rank potential projects, and we got a report on one of the engineering firms that UDOT has contracted to analyze like downtown projects. So of the list of projects, we had like a potential downtown parking structure, Main Street renovations. So we got a report on some of that data. We went through an exercise to kind of rank like our priorities of the stakeholders in the room, things ranging from congestion mitigation to enhancement of tourism and recreation to, broader economic diversification type stuff. It's kind of an interesting exercise. It's a software called Decision Lens. There was agreement on a lot of issues, and what was interesting is it didn't correlate with party lines. There were people all over that kind of had the same feelings and some not, but I think the highest ranking of all was the congestion issues, is my recollection. So that was an interesting exercise, and so the consultants will continue to kind of evaluate or collect information and data and present that to the group ultimately for so we can run those projects through this criteria that UDOT has set up to rank them. And then the idea is to be able to go to the Transportation Commission in late March, early April, but to have the process finished in late March so that we have some projects to present to the Transportation Commission. Last week I attended, or the week before last, I attended the League of Women Voters Sees Moab Town Hall.
Oh, I did that.
With Mary was there. It was a panel. It was a packed house at the Grande Center, and we addressed a broad range of things. Didn't get into depth on a lot of the issues that I think are more kind of specific locally. Bears Ears took up a lot of our time and everyone's feelings and opinions on that, and it was a lot of exchanges and interfacing with our state senator and our 2 members in the House. So it was nice to be able to participate in that. And the event was civil. It wasn't as rowdy as some of the town halls can get, but a lot of ways I viewed it as kind of like just opening the conversations that we've had with the city, and also our meeting with the governor where we go through these issues, and just opening that up to the public and giving them an opportunity to take the microphone and talk on things. So it was an enhancement of same meetings that we've been holding. Last week we attended a prep meeting for our 25K pitch with the governor. So we're still kind of getting that finalized. Zach's office did a good job at preparing kind of a larger pitch deck, and we're refining that down right now to kind of more of a 1-page kind of clean document that's simple, so that we don't the governor doesn't miss the forest through the trees, in our presentation. So it's there's a lot of issues. I think we're kind of probably like a lot of counties kind of bouncing between staying specific to specific requests for the state and the governor's office to contribute to our economic development plan, as opposed to turning it into kind of a broader issues, discussion where obligations and follow-up becomes less clear and therefore you get less results. So that's kind of been my effort on that, is to kind of formalize this more to a pitch. Here are the handful of things that we want. Most of them, if not all, include money. And things that the legislature already funds, transportation, universities, things like that. So I'll look forward to giving that pitch with Mary on Thursday.
4 o'clock.
Yeah, I attended a meeting, an informal meeting with director of the 7 County Infrastructure Coalition and some members of engineering firms that they have contracted to begin a application process for a federal right-of-way through public land in Grande County for an East Canyon transportation corridor. These folks were coming down to meet with the BLM to start the application process, wanted to meet with some local elected officials. So I attended that meeting, and it was a really good meeting in that it was very open and honest and candid as far as the history of those kinds of efforts for a transportation corridor through the Book Cliffs. I felt like the director of the 7 County Infrastructure Coalition was very upfront and honest as far as the fundamentals on their end. There's a lot of narratives and baggage with that project, and a lot of times it's been framed as kind of an oil road in these things, and he kind of put some cards on the table and displayed some of the articulated the fundamentals that are involved in that. I think what's interesting, a large driver for it is kind of tourism related, and so it's a paradigm shift from previous efforts. They are moving forward. This specific application and the subsequent environmental studies is being funded by the Infrastructure Coalition and the Uintah County Transportation Special Service District. But the project within the application is in Grande County. It's in our boundary, and so it's important to me that local, Grande County is made aware. They're not required to engage with us. They're not required right now to do a big public process. They're reaching out, I think, to show some transparency, and also, I think it's just an important thing to do given the projects in Grande County. So as they move forward in their application process, I'm sure it's something that the public will be queued up to. And I think ultimately, there's a desire to make this a state project, a UDOT project. But right now, it's not. It's a 7 County Infrastructure Coalition project and a Uintah County Transportation Special Service District project. So I would say it was a good meeting. I think it was nice to have a meeting on that subject where there's some cards landing on the table, and it's not not a fight, and it's a diverse group. And I imagine if their application moves forward, they'll have, likely an environmental impact study will have to be done, which for a project like that is probably between $5 to $7 million, and it'll take a lot of time. So whether it moves forward, if it does move forward, it'll absolutely play itself out in the in the public arena. So that's all I have to report on.
Evan?
I don't have much to report. I took on those new assignments, but my schedule was already kind of full for those first couple weeks. So I did not attend the trail mix meeting, but I got a copy of the agenda, and I'm waiting on a copy of the minutes. So nothing very earth-shattering there. The library board decided to meet the second Thursday of February instead of January, which I just noticed wasn't on the calendar here, but.
Second Thursday of February.
Yeah. They did meet in December, and they've got it set up as a every other month thing, so. That's all I got.
I'm sorry, did you say every other month? Or every month?
Every other month.
Starting in February?
Yeah.
Okay.
I assume. They kind of jump all over, but Meg's pretty good about getting it all posted and everything. So.
Thank you, Jaylene.
So I went to the, travel council meeting, my first one, which was very interesting. Elaine has plans and already has time scheduled in the middle school to do an education campaign among the students and youth in this area. What positive
Was it a town, what is that called? The town that they do at the middle school?
Oh, no.
It's not that?
No, she's going to go directly into the classroom.
Oh, okay, so it's not that.
Yeah.
Reality town. Yeah. Thank you.
They're going to try to resurrect some old campaigns like Don't Bust the Crust and Got Water. The city is actually anteing up $10,000 to help with the MEC funding. So
wow, that's nice to hear.
And the city reported in that same meeting that they are up 5.5% in sales tax the first 4 months of the fiscal year. So that's good news for them. I too went to the East Canyon meeting, and I think Chris gave a really good summary of it.
I was there too.
It was a positive meeting. It was nice to go to a meeting that has the potential to be pretty divisive and not feel that division. However, having said that, I came away from the meeting pretty confused because it seems like the narrative's gone from this is an oil road, oil and gas, to this is a utility corridor, to this is tourism. And in my opinion, a good case was not made for any of those, including this last one. Not to the point where you could justify spending a couple $100 million of taxpayer money across the state, and I think that the rest of the state would have something to say about it too. So I'm waiting for, I agree, the director was very upfront and honest and open, and I did appreciate that. So I was glad to be at that meeting. Arch's hotspot meeting, good summary. IGP continues to be an issue. The state, as you know, really wants the counties to take that over and solve the intergenerational poverty issues. I feel like we have given it a good faith effort for going on 2 years. We've pulled together a very top-notch team of people to try to address some of the issues. They've actually worked on a few of the goals. So I think things have been done in that area, but as far as a formal county-driven effort, my feeling with that is it's got to have some funding because the state keeps trying to push us to do all these things with no funding. All of the nonprofit and governmental organization leaders that are involved in this effort, they all have full-time jobs. They all write their own grants. They can't be tasked with that. So I kind of want to let the state know that Grande County is, and we can talk about this more, but I feel like we've done what we can. Beyond getting that group together, maybe once a quarter, I don't feel like we can do more. So at some point, I would like buy-in from the council on that.
Well, that was interesting today, what she was saying about.
And if it gets to that point down the road where they want us to do circles, we're going to have some support as well. Yeah. So, I mean, it's not that I'm against this, it's just.
There's no money.
yeah, the kind of, the level of engagement they want is, it's unrealistic.
Seems like to me, it's a good initiative with good purpose, but because it came from the Lieutenant Governor's office, naturally the place to send that is the counties, and it just seems like, that's not the, in my opinion, the most appropriate, channels to make that happen. But
Having said that, I've got 3 meetings I will not be able to attend in the next couple of weeks, so I'd like volunteers. First one is the Moab, Moab Area Watershed Partnership.
Tomorrow,
I think it's tomorrow, yeah,
1 o'clock?
probably.
I can't attend that either.
Canyonlands Healthcare Special Service District.
When's that?
I believe that's next week, next Thursday
What time?
at, that was not on my calendar, 'cause I know, oh, yes it is, 5:30.
Where at?
25th Moab Regional Hospital Education Room, probably 2.
5:30?
Uh-huh.
I'll do that for you.
Thank you. And then the last one is the Housing Authority. You probably can't do that because it's this Thursday at noon. Anyone? Okay.
Can anybody go
That's all
tomorrow?
What's that? No, tomorrow?
I'm out of town tomorrow morning through the rest of the week.
Yeah, me too. Okay, that's all I have.
Okay. Last but not least, let's see, the only meetings that I had to talk to transportation today. Well, I talked to Transportation Special Service District a couple times, but they scheduled a meeting today at 6 o'clock. And I told her, I said, you need to coordinate what's going on with the rest of the county. Because I can't be in 2 places at the same time. So she's new, and she missed it. So we'll get that squared away. I went up to Thompson for their water meeting. Everything's going good with their water board.
Good.
I wish we could say the same to their fire board, but their water board is,
we're doing
is
great.
I mean, there was 6 people there plus a visitor, a new guy that showed up. Everything seems to be working well. They're getting reports back from the state saying that their water's good. They've got a number of wells, not wells, but springs. They're putting out anywhere from 84 to 26 gallons a minute. So it's pretty good springs. They are going to look at developing a couple more out there so they can increase the amount of water that they're dealing with. The water board is doing well. They're just doing what they're supposed to be doing. And there isn't any problems there. Let's see, nothing on catastrophic wildfire. The housing task force reported last time, so everything there. Local emergency planning, we haven't had anything since December. Transportation, and hopefully we'll see something from the VLM soon. I've gotten some emails from them,
Cancellations.
so it looks like they're going to start doing something here soon. So that's all I got.
Thanks, Greg.
I would like to entertain a motion to go into closed session.
Make a motion. Oh, closed session.
Closed session to talk about character, professional competency, or physical or mental health of an individual.
I make that motion.
We have a second? All in favor? Okay, I would like to be in attendance. I would like John West to stay, but I think it would be good for Diana and Ruth to leave. I think it puts you in an awkward place.
Okay, and do you have someone filling out the little form,
Curtis, I gave those to you forms,
the closed session form?
and you put them over there, I think.
This says Gene Chira's on.
I know, but, you know,
This says Jane Shires too.
no, he's all over the place.
I think I put him in here.
Oh, you put him in there.
So you haven't voted yet.
Yeah, we did. Oh, we voted unanimously to go into closed session. Sorry.
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm really sorry.
We did vote.
Okay, let me do my magic with this, and then I will excuse myself. Thank you.
Yeah, we did. You raised your hand? You raised your hand. I think we're tired.
I was looking at the forms.
And it was 6 to 0.